Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Adriel Boals, and this is our 7th tutorial of our beginner series where we talk about why do we 3-bet. And as always, you can find us at hobnob.games. So in our previous tutorials, we talked a little bit about which hands we should be 3-betting with. But today's tutorial, I think it's important to not just know to do it, but understand why we are doing this. So the first reason is really simple, value. We want to get value from weaker hands. So we talked about how the hands we want to 3-bet with include pocket aces, pocket kings, pocket queens, ace king, and sometimes, in fact, most of the time, pocket jacks. These hands are so strong that we just simply want to get value from weaker hands. So for instance, hands in which people oftentimes raise with that we're up against would include hands like ace jack and ace 10. These two hands here are going to be absolutely crushed and dominated by our 3-betting hands. It includes hands like king queen and king jack. These are hands which people like to raise with, and then they don't like to fold. They like to see flops with these hands. And once again, our hands crush these hands. It includes hands like queen jack and jack 10. It includes hands like pocket 10s and pocket 9s. These are all the types of hands in which people commonly raise with that our 3-betting range is way ahead of. So we want to re-raise these hands. And in fact, if you were to take these hands that I just went over, ace jack, ace 10, and so forth, and we want to get used to looking at our starting hand chart. And so all of these hands I just talked about are highlighted in yellow here. And in fact, these hands only make up 9% of all starting hands. So we talked about how aces, kings, queens, and ace, king, and jacks, that makes up our 12% of starting hands. Well, if you go to the next strongest 9% of hands after these first 12%, these are the hands we're talking about. So these are still players playing very premium hands who are playing a very conservative range, and yet we crush them. How much do we crush them? Let's take a look at some specific numbers here. So let's take, for example, pocket aces, clearly the strongest hand in poker. Well, pocket aces against ace jack and ace 10, you're a 92-8 favorite against them. You absolutely crush them. And in fact, if we take the average of pocket aces versus all of these hands combined, we are an 86-14 favorite over them. No doubt, we are crushing these hands. We are way ahead. We definitely want to be re-raising these hands. But what about a hand like pocket queens? Maybe not quite as strong as pocket aces. Mathematically speaking, how does pocket queens do against these hands? Well, again, as you can see here, especially hands that include a queen like king queen and queen jack, we absolutely crush them, 83-17 favorites over them. And on average, we are 75-25 favorite. We are way ahead. Definitely want to be re-raising with these hands. What about even pocket jacks? The hand we talked about how a lot of people are afraid of because they know it's a strong hand, but should we be 3-betting with pocket jacks? Well, let's take a look mathematically at how pocket jacks does against those hands. And again, hands that include a jack, like queen jack, king jack, even if they have an overpair with their jack, like an ace, a king, or a queen, we're still a 65-35 favorite. They have a jack and a smaller card, we're absolutely crushed them, 87-13. If they have a smaller pocket pair, again, we're a very, very big favorite against them. On average, we are 67-33% favorite. We absolutely crush these other very strong hands. So when people say there are 3 ways to play pocket jacks and all 3 are wrong, that person does not know what they're talking about. Look how pocket jacks does against some of the strongest hands in poker. You're a very, very big favorite. That's why the vast majority of the time when we have pocket jacks, we want to 3-bet with it. And we're going to do so with confidence, not fear. A second reason why we want to 3-bet is it's so much easier to get stacks in. If you have one of these premium hands, at some point you're probably hoping to get all in and take the person's entire stack. So let's take a little closer look at how this works mathematically. So let's assume for the moment we're playing a 1-3 game where the blinds are $1 and $3, and we're playing with 100 big blinds. That's very standard, which in this case would be everyone's got stack sizes of $300 in front of them. And let's imagine we have a scenario where we get dealt pocket kings, so one of the hands that we want to 3-bet with. Let's take a look at mathematically what happens. So let's say pre-flop, someone raises, and in a 1-3 game, a fairly standard raise size is the $15. So someone raises the $15, someone calls, and now the action's on you. If you don't 3-bet, if you just call, let's see what it takes in order to get stacks in. So you just call. So now going to the flop, there's $45 in the pot, and each player has $285 remaining in their stacks. Okay, so let's say flop comes, you still feel like you got best hand, so you bet 3/4 pot. That's a fairly standard flop bet here. So we bet $30, and let's just say we get one person who calls, the other person folds. So now going to the turn, there's $105 in the pot, and there's still $255 in the player stacks. So here maybe we can bet 3/4 pot again, and so we bet $75 and the person calls. Well, now going to the river, there's $265 in the pot and $180 still in the stacks. So now we can go all in for 180 and hope to get called by a worse hand. So it's not that you can't get all in by the river with pocket kings and maybe still have a worse hand call you, but you have to bet all 3 streets. It takes a very strong hand for someone to bet all 3 streets at this point. And in fact, a lot of the hands are going to beat you. Let's compare this to the exact same scenario, still playing a 1-3 game where everyone starts with $300 stacks. You get dealt pocket kings. Someone raises to 15, there's a caller, but now instead of just calling, you 3-bet. And what should we 3-bet to? Remember, it's going to be 3x plus 1 more x for every person in the pot. And here we already have 2 people in the pot, so 3 plus 2 is 5. So we want to go 5 times the $15. So we want to raise this to $60. So we 3-bet this to $60. And let's say that both people call. Well, if both people call, now there's $180 in the pot going to the flop and $240 left in the stack. So now if you make a standard 3/4 size pot bet, you're going to be betting $120. And same as last time, let's say one of them folds and one of them calls. If you get a caller here, you got them. They are stuck. They are in really, really big trouble. Here's the reason why. Because now in this scenario, now going to the turn, there's $420 in the pot, and there's only $120 left in the stack. It's going to be really hard for your opponent to fold any hand here whatsoever. So now you can just easily go in for $120. And once again, there's going to be lots of weaker hands than yours, they're going to call. So once they call that flop bet, you got them on the hook. You just reel them in at that point. It's really easy. In fact, you could do a variation on this. Since this line is predicated on them calling your $120 flop bet, and that's a pretty big size bet, you can change this up a little bit. On the same scenario, on the flop, and there's $180 in the pot, instead of betting 120, let's say you bet really small, sometimes called a down bet, and you bet $70 here. So it's not such a scary bet size for someone to call. So now the person calls, you still got them. You still got them on the hook, because now going to the turn, there's $320 in the pot, only $170 behind. Just a little tad more than a half pot size bet. So now you can go all in for 170. And once again, there's a whole bunch of weaker hands that you beat that will call this amount here. So it makes it so much easier to get all in and get called all in by weaker hands if you 3-bet pre-flop. That very simple 3-bet pre-flop massively changes the math involved in the hand and makes it so much easier for you to get stacks in, for you to take the other person's stack with your pocket kings being the best hand. So this massively changes things in your favor. So once again, this is why we want to be 3-betting. We want to be 3-betting for value because we're ahead of even very good hands, and it makes it so much easier to get stacks in while your hand is still best hand. So in our next tutorial, we'll be talking about outs. If you don't even know what an out is, that's okay. We're going to explain it and talk about the importance and how to count outs in our next tutorial. As always, you can find this tutorial along with all of our tutorials, along with where you can download our poker game and play live poker games at hobnob.games. I will see you next time.